Welcome everybody to the Social Dig, home of the greatest underrated show on the World Wide Web. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. And as always, we'll be digging into the topics that keep you talking and the talk that keeps you thinking. Kick your feet up, come in, get comfortable, get an ice cold beverage, get ready to join the conversation. As always, I got my guy in here, the engineer at the Social Dig, Mr. Mateo. What's up with you, man? How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, my friend. How you doing? Good to be
Doing
here.
good, man. I'm feeling good because we got these hearings coming up tomorrow, man. I'm pretty optimistic, though tempering my expectations at the same time, man. So I guess we'll see what's going on, man. How you feeling?
Same thing. This will be a public reveal that'll have some impact on the world at large. That, those of us who are in the community know well of everybody in the hearing, but it'll be exposure beyond that that'll help. I'm tempered as far as new revelations, so we'll have to see how that rolls. Maybe we'll get a tidbit here or there, but in the end, it's all good and it moves the ball down the field.
Yeah. And today's topic is going to be the history of the government and UFOs. So, for most OGs in the space, I mean, it'd probably be a lot of stuff that you're familiar with, but we want to touch the people who are just coming into this thing. There's a lot of people out there who are just figuring out that these things are real, and they're just stepping in, getting their feet wet in this space. So we're going to be touching some of that, and we have asked the chat, and we've been doing that for the last few episodes, and it's been working pretty good. I love that the chat's been getting involved, and just like it says here, you can post a response to the questions that we have during the show in the chat, live chat, or you can call in or call the message line. Either way, you can leave a message regarding the question asked, the topic we're covering, or just to give your general observation on the state of ufology right now, or maybe even talk about your experience, and it's something that we want to start putting on future shows. So with that being said, that number is 856-843-3444 or 856-THE-DIG. We're going to start getting this thing rolling, man. I'm really appreciating a lot of the love that we're getting from our viewers out there, our family, our humanity family. That's what we're going to call the chat, our humanity family, because we are all family and we are trying to move the needle and get humanity to a better place. That's what this thing is all about. So just like we always do, we're going to go ahead and get into what we do here. And we're going to start it out with, you already know, disclosure news. All right, disclosure news. So, we got it going here. Let me go ahead and get us into this. So we have, as it says here, UFO hearings, what to expect. What to expect? That's the big question. I mean, we know we've had hearings already in the past. We had a couple that, a lot of people call nothing burgers. But I think this one's going to be a little different. I mean, we got Tim Burchett kind of heading the charge. Guy, super outspoken. And I just kind of love his passion for the subject, because he knows, he truly believes that this thing is real, and he's not going to take no for an answer. So how you feeling about that, Mateo?
Exactly the same, and I'm very positive about Tim Burchett and his passion for the whole movement and his desire to dig for the truth. I think all of us who are in the know and know David Fravor, Ryan Graves, David Grush, the whole nine very well, and we know their stories all too well. We have to temper or curb our enthusiasm about what might come tomorrow. This is my opinion. We are going to see a detailed questioning and we're going to hear again stories that all of us already know. But we have to keep in mind that everyone who's listening will have never heard this before, so that's part of the benefit. And we might get a tidbit or two that is new. And more importantly, if there is a secure classified hearing to follow the public hearing that we all get to witness, the goodies will really come out in there if they haven't already been come out, because I know Grush already interviewed with the Senate Intelligence Committee. Then there'll be even more. So my personal hope is that the revelations that come out, even in the classified hearings, will compel the people in Congress, both reps and senators, to have to feel compelled to divulge to the public. That's what we're after. We need the goods. Now, and one other point, regarding the disappointment as to who is in the hearing tomorrow. Yes, we all would have loved a first-hand whistleblower who works for Lockheed Martin. That's what I was hoping for, right? That may be coming. So we have to be patient. We have to take tomorrow and curb our enthusiasm and raise our expectations and appreciate it for what it's worth. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, man, I can agree with you on that. And I actually have a clip that we're going to get into in a second. Bryce Zabel released a video, and he had a couple great points there. Kind of touched on some of the things that you just said, but I want to go ahead and give a shout out to the chat real quick. I know way earlier Cashew came through, so I want to shout out Cashew, Magneticus Attractus, James Western, Mr. Tom King, and Bryson's Folly. And so Tom King, I guess we'll start with this message here. As Tom King said, in the past we had a nothing burger, a McDonald's basic hamburger. This time we'll get a Burger King or In-N-Out Nothing Better burger. Later on, UFO Five Guys burger in 2025. Just hilarious,
You're making
right?
me hungry, Tom.
And Bryce's Folly was kind of pinning to what you were saying. You know, first time some others are going to hear this. And he says,
Yes.
right, it's like when you go to your favorite band show and they play the same old song, might be the first time someone else has heard it.
Yes.
And
And it
you
doesn't
know,
make it any less important. Right.
and we have the clip that we're gonna actually listen to. Bryce Zabel kind of touches on that, and I want to, some other things that he says in there. I really feel like Bryce Zabel is on the same wavelength as us here at the
Hmm.
Social Dig. I would love to have him on as a guest. He
Yeah, I
seems like
agree
a
with you.
great guy. So let me go ahead and get us into that. Let's see what Bryce is talking about, and then we'll comment on this here.
When people say, well, these hearings better really have some new information in them, I'm saying to myself, I don't know that that's exactly what has to happen. I mean, the truth of the matter is you are going to get to see Dave Grush unfiltered and uncut tomorrow, because he is speaking before Congress and he will be under oath, as I believe will the other witnesses be. If he lies, if he goes before Congress and lies, you can go to prison for that. So I think you should take very seriously what he's going to talk about tomorrow. And from what I understand, he will not only be talking about the things that he mentioned to Ross in that famous exclusive interview, namely that there have been crashes, there have been retrievals, there are intact craft. Some of them were abandoned. I mean, think about that word, an abandoned intact craft. There have been reverse engineering programs from private aerospace, and yes, even the B word bodies that have been recovered of either pilots or passengers. I don't think anyone is distinguished dead or alive, but from what I understand, some were alive. So we're in a brave new world. I guess the way I look at it, all of us, red or blue, Newsmax or CNN or American or Chinese or Russian or whatever, all of us have more in common with each other than we do with a non-human intelligence. This thing has been going on minimum since World War II. from the Foo Fighters toward the end of the war, through the ghost rockets in Sweden in 1946, to flying saucers in the U.S. in 1947, which evolved into UFOs, which have now evolved into UAP, which first stood for unidentified aerial phenomena and now stands for unidentified anomalous phenomena. All I can say is, thank God we're getting around to having these hearings. The point is, there's still a lot of stigma out there. There's still a lot of ignorance out there. And yet there is more reason at this point in our history to feel like we are getting closer and closer, because everybody's talking about this now. And they'll probably still be talking about it after these hearings, because let's face it, even if you've heard about them before, David Grush and David Fravor and Ryan Graves are three great witnesses who are going to be on their tip-top behavior to tell their stories. And they'll probably add new details, or at least Grush will, if they'll let him. And I just look forward to at least advancing the conversation. Now, people say, well, wow, is this full disclosure? No, I don't think it's full disclosure, but I do think it's something that is very interesting for us. I would call it confirmation. I feel like confirmation is the next word we need, because disclosure, particularly full disclosure, is like, wow, that is a lot. Frankly, the thing that would get everything started and help people get over the I guess, ontological shock, which is the term of the moment people like to use, would be if we simply had relevant people in government or in the know in one way or another who simply confirmed the basic idea that we're not alone. They are not up there waiting to communicate with us by radio signals. No, that we don't need SETI, because they're here. They're here right now. They've been here for a while. They fly around in our space. They fly around in our atmosphere, and they swim around in our seas. And they seem to do all three pretty damn good with the same vehicles. So we have work to do to tell ourselves full disclosure, but confirmation would at least get this issue where the people who are in our media, who are supposed to know something about something, would actually go, oh, wow, that's interesting. Like I said, a lot of what you're going to hear is familiar to you, but think about your family members and your friends. It may not be familiar to them. And if you can just turn them onto this link to the hearings, have them listen live if they want, or at least share the link afterwards, they're going to come up a level. So these hearings are about preparing the battlefield for disclosure more than anything. And they are a predicate to future hearings. I believe, no matter what it is, and I know there are probably parts of it that are a little discomforting, a little ontological shocking, but I believe we can handle the truth. And even if we can't, we have to handle the truth. So I'll leave you with this. People, get ready. It's time.
Totally awesome.
Oh my God. I didn't
love
see
it.
that. That must have been the one that came out this afternoon that I wanted to watch. Beautiful.
That is, and look,
Beautiful.
when I heard him say that, and the reason why I want to show that is because he said everything he said are things that we have also said on this channel,
Well, all the
and
thing is about what we have in common. Indeed.
it's just crazy. I felt that connection with him there, and
Totally.
he's totally speaking for the right reasons. He is concerned about how this would affect humanity, and I wonder if he watches the show. Bryce, if you are watching the show, come by. We would love to have you on, because I think it would be an excellent discussion. Being that we're coming from the same place, man. What do you think about this, Mattel?
I couldn't agree with you more, man. He is so like-minded with us. His motivations are the same as us. His expectations for tomorrow are the same as us, and his thoughts about the impact of tomorrow are the same as us that we've already spoke about. And that was the first time I had seen that clip from him, which I think came out this afternoon on Need to Know. Now, it's perfect. Um, yeah, we're going to hear the same stories again, but and the confirmation word, which is our good friend Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, his favorite word, which I've adopted too, because disclosure is one thing, but confirmation is another. and confirmation in itself is a huge thing. Tomorrow, I know David Grush is going to state for the world, although he's already done it on the News Nation interview with Ross Coulthard, he's going to state about the confirmation to the world. And those who haven't heard it yet are going to ask are going to remark, wow, and maybe ask some follow up questions that'll prompt further action. So I'm positive about tomorrow in spite of the fact that I didn't get my Lockheed Martin employee that I referred to earlier, but that doesn't matter. That'll maybe come down later on. But the good news is tomorrow's going to be a big day for planet Earth and for all of humanity.
Yeah, well said, well said. And I just, I feel like, and I think I said this before, I really feel like, there may be a surprise that no one
Mm,
is actually expecting.
that would be fun.
Um, they talk a lot about David Grush and the fact that he has secondhand information. But I would beg to differ because if you watch the interview, I think he says that he was shown things, and
Yes.
so
And
so
photos and documents.
and
Yes,
so, who's to say he doesn't have that information? Who's to say he doesn't have those photos to show?
he
And I
does.
think that's one thing that a lot of people looked over, glanced over, even in the media. So that could be one of those things that he brings out a photo that probably we wouldn't get to see, but he would at least be able to present that to Congress. And so it just also points to the fact that he is more important of a witness than people give him. So, I'm really looking forward to it. And we can go ahead and get into the main topic. And then we have our obviously ask the chat question here. So let's go ahead and get out of the news. All right, so we're going to talk about the history of the government and UFOs. We know it's been a long, drawn out history full of cover ups, full of the government putting their noses in places maybe where it doesn't belong. Being that we are the world power, I kind of feel like sometimes we might overstep our boundaries and get into business that really doesn't concern us necessarily. And I think the fact that we are the world power, we kind of throw our weight around the world and try to uh, take over everything as far as dipping our nose into other people's business. What do you think about that, Mattel?
We've been guilty of that for decades, man. I mean, I don't know. We've ended up having to become the chaperones of the world because we're the only, I'll call it, free world government, in spite of our government's corruption that we know about. It. I can tell you this, having lived outside of the United States for a little while, our corruption pales in comparison to that of the rest of the world. We all of us who are call ourselves Americans need to be very thankful for where we live because it could be a whole heck of a lot worse. Now, with that in mind, us being the chaperones or the mediators or the caretakers or the enforcers of the rest of the free world, it's a double-edged sword. We're going to get condemned for doing that when we probably shouldn't. It's a tough line to walk, right? And I don't know where the line is either. It's hard to say, but it is what it is. I think we'll always try to. We may stick our nose in where we don't belong, as you said, on occasion, but in general, I think the United States is for the greater good, and I don't think we've screwed up too many times. We have screwed up. We picked the wrong people to maybe back on occasion. There's plenty of cases of that, but you know, the net is we're trying to do the right thing. And what do
Well,
you do? Do
and
you do nothing, or do you do something and maybe make a mistake or two? I think I would rather err on the latter.
well, here's where that gets twisted up. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at this here because um we have situations where, in this case, the on the UFO subject, we've gone all around the world and stuck our nose into their business and have taken over craft, brought them back here to the United States, and then kept it a secret from the world. So we'll get into asking the chat.
Ask the chat.
The chat question is going to be, what do you think about the government's relationship with UFOs? So let me go ahead and take a look in the chat. I know there's a few messages in here. Let's see. Derek Galloway.
Yeah, Derek
Let's
has some
see.
sort of breaking news that happened at 7:12, and I'm not sure what he's talking about. But
Uh-oh.
yeah,
What are we talking about, Derek? Breaking
I don't know.
news?
I asked him to tell us, so maybe he can fill us in because I'm unfamiliar. Obviously, he's saying something earlier. He said Burchett and Luna are out, and what a clown show. And I'm not sure what he means by that. But
Whoa. Okay. We can go ahead and take a
oh,
look at that,
he just
actually.
stated Tim Burchett is not heading the meeting tomorrow. Who is then?
Okay. Interesting information. Let me see if we can find that actually
Yeah,
before we
maybe there's a
jump
Twitter
into it
thing.
here. Let's check out.
Your general question was government involvement, right? And what people think of the government involvement, as far as this is correct. That was your question to the chat.
Yes. Let me actually. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
What do
what
you
do you
think
think
about? Well,
about the
I'm looking at
government's
it now. Yeah.
relationship with UFOs?
Yeah.
So,
So that's. I mean, we've discussed it on the show more than once. So yeah, I'm curious what people think. I mean, it's we've got the Senate, we've got the House of Representatives, we've got the executive branch, and we have the Pentagon. Let's say the military. We'll call the military, which Arrow is a part of. So yeah, there's kind of a different facets here, and I would be curious what people think.
yeah, and I'm looking up Timber because that would be obviously some big news. I mean, we just
Yeah, who's
went
Dave?
ahead and
Derek?
covered
Dave
that.
who? Dave Scott? Dave? Somebody on Twitter? I'm not sure. Derek
Let's
wrote. Dave
see.
was just stating that he's not surprised, and it's a clown show.
Okay, so this is Tim Burchett stated. He tweeted himself, I was just informed, along with Real Anna Paulina, that
Who's
I will
Scott?
not be chairing the UAP hearing.
Oh boy,
So
who is?
that's kind of big because
Yeah, Derek said Dave Scott was talking about it. Maybe Dave had said something on Twitter.
yeah, no, I just went to Tim Burchett's Twitter. Actually, I can't bring it up on the stream here. Can you bring it up from your end?
No, I don't have
You're
a
not
Twitter
logged in.
account because I'm a social media misfit.
All right, let me. I can at least read it from here. That's that's kind of big, man. Yeah. So yeah, Tim Burchett posted an hour ago. I was just informed, along with Real Anna Paulina, that I will not be chairing the UAP hearing. He doesn't link to anything.
Who's the head of the House Oversight? It's not him or Luna. Maybe it's the chair of the House Oversight Committee because that's who's sponsoring this event.
So, and my guy Lou Jimenez from Lou Reviews, he's tweeting here that it could be related to this,
James
and
Comer is the head of the House Oversight.
and
Yeah, there you go. Bryson Foley just texted that or chatted that. I looked it up in parallel with you, Bryson. Yeah,
yeah.
so maybe Comer is going to run it.
Well, it
Okay,
states
Derek is saying Comer. All right,
Represent
Comer
Republican Tim
has
Burchett. Yeah, go
Comer's
ahead.
been in the press a little bit. but not nearly as passionate nor as informed as Burchett. Ugh, that's concerning. Then that means, will the right questions be asked?
Yeah, shout out to David Divine Broadcasted. Thanks for coming through.
Yes, thank you,
Long
everybody
Island
coming in.
Bigfoot, thanks for coming through.
We got a whole bunch of
Paradox
people coming
Fossils, thanks for coming through.
in.
Let's see, I think I saw Sophia. Thank you for coming through. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, this is actually could be game changing here because we need the right question, and that was my whole thing. I was anticipating on having Burchett asking the right questions up there. So now, what does this mean for the hearing? How is this a totally different hearing? Do we get softball questions instead now, or what are we looking at here? What do you
We
think,
don't
man?
know. Now, yeah, no, I'm worried too. I mean, I'm hoping that because Comer is less informed than Burchett or Luna or anyone else who we saw in the press conference on Thursday, and all who we've been dealing with for several months, I'm hoping Comer says, "All right, Burchett, give me your questions because I need to know what to ask." I don't know Comer as far as his personality and if he's the kind of guy who thinks he knows what he's doing and he's not willing to take input from somebody else. We don't know that yet. So yeah, kind of an unknown here at in the 11th hour. What's going to happen? Eek.
And we just talked about how there's all these things that have been happening this week that have been attempting to put up roadblocks ahead of this UFO hearing. And this is just another thing here. And is it a win for whoever it is trying to do this? And that it bothers me, and it should bother everyone, seeing how blatant something like this is. Now, hopefully Tim Burchett comes out tonight or before this hearing and kind of explains why he's no longer heading this hearing. Now, like I say, my guy Lou Jimenez from Lou Reviews tweeted something that he thinks it could be related to, and he linked an article talking about breaking news. Republican Tim Burchett's office was officially told he is subject of a formal ethics complaint regarding his UFO scams.
What?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was when? This afternoon? Just recently?
Ethics complaint regarding his UFO scams. Today, several were filed. Media will publish them shortly. Burchett was offered to see them first. Staff refused. He's on the oversight committee. So,
You know
developing
what's
story.
going on? Here's my opinion. They gave a huge kick in the teeth to the Pentagon and the military in that press conference last Thursday. You know that. We all know that. We were all like doing the wave, loving it, but they kicked them in the teeth in the public domain, right? Guess what? Just like David Grush, they are now suffering reprisals.
Jesus.
This is hardball, bro. This is no joke. This is ugly, and it could get uglier. Oh boy. Let's just hope that David Fravor and Ryan Graves and David Grush, whom we all know and love here, have the fortitude to maybe interject some information tomorrow when they're not even asked.
Right. See, and I think that's going to be the problem because I don't think that they'll be able to do that. I think they'll pretty much be there in a question answer scenario where, depending on the question asked, will be the information that they end up giving. So, if you don't ever ask the right questions, you're not going to get the answers that we need. So I'm just still bothered by that right now. But I guess
That is disturbing. Oh
it
boy.
falls into the theme of the whole show because it's the history of government in UFOs and this subject, and the fact that it's been a cover up since 1947, even going through this moment right now, this very second
I
that
know.
we're sitting here. So, God, let's go ahead and get into
Let's
this
rock on. Yeah, no, I appreciate.
because
Thank you, Derek, for bringing this up, and we'll have to deal with it tomorrow. But let's forge ahead, and I'm looking forward to the show here because I love the history. You know, I do.
indefinitely. So we're gonna always
Ask the chat.
we're gonna ask the chat always. So if you see anything like you just posted, Derek, if you have any developing information on that, please put it in the chat so we can go ahead and take a look at it. But for now, we're gonna jump into the history once again, starting with the Roswell UFO. And once again, just to preface, now we have a lot more people in here, just want to kind of preface that a lot of us in ufology have studied the history of ufology, and we know, like the back of our hands, most of the things that have occurred in ufology up to this point. So the target is today, and the reason why we're doing this show today is for those new ones that are coming in that are intrigued by the fact that we're having these hearings coming up, that are just getting their feet wet in ufology and are trying to absorb information, and we want to bring them up to speed. So sit back and enjoy what we have here and what we're going to put together. So with
Great
that being
summary you
said,
got coming because I read it up front. So good job to you up front, Rob. People get ready for a nice summary who don't know the history.
we're going to go all the way up from the back in the day up to speed. So starting out here with the Roswell UFO. So obviously Roswell UFO 1947. In 1947, a UFO allegedly crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. The U.S. military initially claimed it was a weather balloon, but conspiracy theories emerged suggesting it was an extraterrestrial spacecraft, which we know they reported it was a spacecraft right off the bat. That was their initial statement on this, and then they reverted back and stated it was a weather balloon. So the Roswell Incident in 1947 is perhaps the most well-known and controversial UFO event in history. And it took place in Roswell, New Mexico, when an unidentified flying object reportedly crashed on a ranch. The U.S. military initially issued a statement that the wreckage was of a weather balloon, but this explanation sparked immediate skepticism and led to various conspiracy theories. Many believed the government was covering up the truth and that the wreckage was in fact that of extraterrestrial spacecraft and the bodies of its occupants. Over the years, witness testimonies and alleged leaked documents further fueled the Roswell UFO conspiracy, leading to an ongoing debate about the existence of a government cover-up regarding the presence of aliens. Now, and if you remember this, Mateo, they came with the Roswell Report in the 90s where they came out and said, oh, no, it wasn't actually a weather balloon. It was top secret program that we had, and we were dropping dummies at the time. And yeah, do you recall that? Do you recall that story?
Very much. That was during Clinton's presidency, I think. And yeah, no, it was a mess. It was a mess. I mean, they said that, and then a couple years later, they came out with the dummy thing, and the dummies weren't used until 1950 or something like that. So that didn't add up. No, it's a cover up.
The cover up of a cover up.
Exactly, and the late great Stanton Friedman found this out in the 80s, and it's been BS ever since. Edgar Mitchell, whom we talked about, in the last show, because he was always on the cutting edge after he got involved. He grew up in Roswell. He talked to his people. And they all came running to him. He said, I'm not inviting this. They know me. They know I'm an astronaut. They come to me. He heard it all. Now, where there's smoke, there's fire. David Grush, remember Ross Holtart kind of asked him indirectly about this case. I don't know if the truth will ever come out about this, but this was the start of a long-standing 75-year cover-up that we all know and love now. It's just the way it is.
I'll be going next month on my road trip. I will be going through Corona, New Mexico, the spot of the Roswell crash. I might well get out there with the metal detector myself and try to find some fragments. I know a lot of people recently had gone out there this year during the Roswell convention. But yeah, I have a few few stops on my itinerary, and I'm going to do some filming there. And we'll be featuring, we'll put all that together, featured on some upcoming shows here. But moving into the next, so we're going to go in chronological order here. So the next one that we have is going to be the Washington, D.C. UFOs, right? So we all recall this. This is another incident where these UFOs were right over the White House in Washington. However, today they still deny that anything like this took place. So in 1952, numerous UFOs sightings occurred over Washington, D.C., causing public concern. The U.S. Air Force conducted investigations and held a press conference attributing the sightings to weather anomalies. However, the incident fueled public interest of UFOs and raised questions about the potential government involvement. In July 1952, the skies over Washington, D.C. experienced an extraordinary series of UFO sightings, sparking a significant UFO wave. Numerous credible witnesses, including military personnel and experienced pilots, reported sighting an unidentified aerial phenomenon over the nation's capital. The sightings were so numerous and compelling that they even appeared on the front pages of major newspapers. The U.S. Air Force conducted investigations under Project Blue Book, an official study into UFO sightings, while the United States Air Force attributed the sightings to weather anomalies and temperature inversions. The explanation failed to satisfy the skeptics, leading to suspicions of government secrecy and a cover-up of potential extraterrestrial encounters. So with that being said, with the UFOs over Washington, they're literally over Washington. They were seen by military personnel. How is this one that they could still explain away or disregard or act like didn't happen? What do you think about this one here?
Too big to deny. Not one, 2 weekends, right? 2 weekends. And they sent up interceptors after them, right? And the interceptors couldn't touch them. They disappeared when the interceptors showed up. The interceptors flew back to the airport or the military base there, Andrews. They showed back up again. That's not swamp gas or weather anomalies or temperature inversions. And then, of course, General Samford, the Air Force guy, never trust the Air Force when it comes to UAPs, right? He gets on TV and has that famous press conference where he talked about there's no reason to believe there's any concern or nothing to see here was basically his message. Yeah, no. Another great classic, and I'm happy you're covering all these, Rob. Another great classic case of U.S. government cover-up at the hands of our friends at the Air Force, of course. They figure prominently throughout all of this.
I was going to say, I think that's a recurring theme here.
It
the
is.
fact that the government is involved, and then but it's wild that you could have UFOs in Washington D.C. over the White House, and today we are still trying to get them to admit that certain things took place, and then obviously still trying to obfuscate what we're doing with these hearings. So pretty crazy. But going into our next one here, which is Project Blue Book. So this actually, that case we just talked about, was featured in Project Blue Book. So Project Blue Book, for those who do not know, was an official U.S. Air Force study aimed at investigating UFO sightings and assessing their potential threat to national security. Though it concluded most cases were explainable, it did not entirely quell the speculation and conspiracy. So Project Blue Book was a systematic study conducted by the U.S. Air Force to investigate UFO sightings between 1952 and 1969. The project aimed to assess whether UFOs posed any threat to national security and to determine if there were any technological advancements by foreign powers. Over the years, Project Blue Book investigated thousands of UFO reports. While most cases were deemed explainable as natural phenomenon or man-made objects, a small percentage remained unexplained. Critics argued that the project served as a public relations effort to downplay the UFO phenomenon and hide potential evidence of extraterrestrial encounters. And we know this one well. We know it ended with the Condon Report, right? And isn't that where it ended?
And that put that canceled it. So the Condon Report came in, said nothing to see here. And if you read the details of the Condon Report, there were actually things to see here. And if you read Project Blue Book, as our late great Stanton Friedman cited many a time, there were 700 unexplained cases. Yes, out of 10,000 plus or 11,000, whatever the number was. But there wasn't the conclusion that nothing was going on is not true. And Condon, of course, we all know he was predispositioned to debunk the whole thing. And later we heard from J. Allen Hynek that Blue Book was predispositioned to debunk everything, to keep the lid on it and keep the public calm. Just another big organized disinformation campaign. That one, Rob, it's like the stuff is glaring you in the face and people are like, oh no, they didn't do anything wrong. Yes, they did. And it stinks out loud. And if you don't acknowledge it, you're sticking your head in the sand. So yeah, it's another one of those cases.
And I think one of the important things is, and especially to show like the newer people coming in, all the only thing that they hear is that, oh, this has been going on for 75 years.
Yes.
So which is just a number. But when you really look at the things that they did cover up, and then you look at them as a total, then it becomes more of a shame that they would do this to the public or to humanity, really. Like, why would you? In all these instances, you had the opportunity to step forward and admit that these things were going on. However, you chose to do something different. And that's what you're going to see in every single case. And not only that, not just here in the United States, but we are going to cover some ones that obviously took place overseas. And I think that's where, when I was saying earlier that we kind of get into business that isn't ours, because we are the superpower, then it kind of shows that when they say people from other countries say, oh, is it just a United States thing? And no, it's not really just a United States thing. It's just the fact that the United States are always the ones on the scene trying to take control of the situation, regardless what country these things happen to be in. And who knows how many things that have occurred in other countries that didn't get a chance to get reported because the U.S. government was on top of it so fast that it was just never something that ever got reported. So, and I think that's kind of what we're doing here.
That's exactly what we're doing. And bravo, Rob. And for those who are watching this as we cover the history, and we'll ultimately get to the end in present day, what's happening tomorrow, what happened tonight, which Derek and Bryson brought to our attention about Tim Burchett and his role in the hearing tomorrow. The obfuscation and the attempt to hide it is still going on, right? It's like this constant fight that we're dealing with. So all we're doing in this show is bringing everyone up to speed that this is an ongoing thing. And I love it because, this history is important so you can appreciate the present. Yes, we have a little advantage today. And the hope, and we'll get to this toward the end, the hope is we can finally break through. But no, keep going. This is awesome. I love it.
Definitely, yeah. So we're jumping into the next story, which this one is it's a little more heavy and it's a little more troubling, obviously, when you have this incident, which was at Malmstrom Air Force Base. This UFO incident happened in 1967, and the Malmstrom Air Force Base incident occurred March 24th, 1967, at a missile base in Montana, USA. Witnesses reported sightings and unidentified flying objects in the vicinity of the base, and simultaneously Several nuclear missile silos experienced temporary malfunctions, rendering them inoperable. The incident raised concerns about the government's handling of UFO encounters involving nuclear facilities. Critics speculated that the UFO's presence demonstrated technological capabilities beyond human understanding and the potential vulnerability of nuclear installations to such phenomena. As the government's response remained limited, theories of a cover up gained traction. So, we saw who was it, Robert Salas
Yep.
that was dealing with this one here. We saw him testify
Yep.
at the citizens hearing for disclosure back in 2013, the one Stephen Bassett put on.
Yep. And he also was there, I think, was he there at 2003 with Greer? He may have been. I'm not
I
sure.
think he was there as well. 2001 at the Disclosure
At the
Project
2001,
1.0.
yeah.
I think he was there as well. Yeah.
Then
But
look at
the
the list you've created here. I mean, besides Salas's one, which was the Maelstrom, there's like 6 of them. I haven't ever seen a nice map like this. That's like it happened all over the place.
and it's concerning though, right? Because these are the strongest weapons that we have here on Earth. However, these extraterrestrials were able to, and as many of us know, were able to shut a lot of these down, and were in some cases in other countries able to activate these or put them online.
Yeah.
So how once again, when you if you have humanity's if you have the concern for humanity, the compassion for humanity, why wouldn't this be something that you would step forward and try to say, okay, this is what happened, and we're trying to find a way to figure this out, but you just stood by and let this happen. And not only that, we're going to get into one where people were affected, and then the government. We'll talk about that. I'm sure you know which one we're talking about, Mattel.
Hmm.
But yeah. So with that being said, and you point out a good point. All these missile silos disabled. You have Malmstrom. You have Minot. You have F.E. Warren Air Force Base. You have the 1381st Geo Survey, Big Sur, California, Strategic Missile Squadron, all back in the 60s and 70s. At any moment, had any of those missiles gone offline or were compromised, we would have. I don't know if we'd be sitting here talking about this today. Actually, if that happened, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if the Russians knew we were compromised, who knows what they would have done? Honestly, given the Russians, as we found out later after the perestroika and the breakup of the Soviet Union, they were dealing with their own issues, as you alluded to, where their missiles were getting turned on, and they were also unsure of what the heck was going on. So I don't know. Thankfully,
It just,
cooler heads prevailed in
but it
all
makes you think
situations.
in the situation where things could have changed dramatically for humanity. So, say nuclear war kicked off behind this, or the ETs, for whatever reason, detonated one of these things, and that would have been instantaneous effect on humanity. However, we were unaware that the situation had even happened. I think that's just goes to show you, like, if they didn't tell us that that was going on in that moment, then if we had something more serious, just like today when you hear the Lou Elizondos and people keep kicking around the word somber, and you're like, everybody asks, like, what does that mean? Like, what do they mean by somber? So is there this thing similar to this where there could be a huge catastrophe in the government, just because for whatever reason they want to just sit back and keep their lips closed, even though we might be on the brink of something that could affect everyone. You know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, I don't know what the motives are either, to your point. I mean, why would the ETs want to instigate nuclear war when it appears in our country they were trying to prevent it? So it's a tough call. I mean, we don't, in the end, it'll all make sense, but right now we still don't know.
Now, looking at that, I mean, that was obviously probably one of the more serious instances, if I'm going to be truthful on this list that we have. But let's dive into the next one here, which was the incident 1976 in Tehran, Iran, where the Iranian Air Force reported a UFO encounter over Tehran. Rumors suggested the U.S. government may have been involved in investigating the incident. In September 1976, the Iranian Air Force reported a significant UFO encounter over Tehran. The incident involved multiple military witnesses and radar confirmations of unusual flying objects in the city's airspace. Rumors emerged that the U.S. government may have been involved in investigating the Tehran UFO incident, suggesting cooperation with Iranian authorities. However, the lack of concrete evidence supporting this claim has left the incident shrouded in mystery, leaving room for speculation about a potential government cover up. And I believe this was the incident where the pilot engaged the UFO. Do you recall that incident?
Yep, I do, and it's very well documented and very well played on many UFO documentary over the past several decades. Um, it was a couple F-4 Phantom pilots, right? This was back in the era when Iran was an ally and the Shah was in power, and we were giving them military support. And they had F-4 Phantoms, and they went after the UFO, and they tried to engage it, and everything in the jet shut off right when the guy armed his weapons and was trying to do something, and then he lost control and turned away. The story goes he turned away one time, regained control, then he went back again, and I guess some sort of a small orb separated from the main ship and came and flew around his ship and may have even landed, and it was bizarre. And I've seen the firsthand interview with this pilot. I don't know if he's alive anymore, but it was quite compelling. I mean, I don't think this guy had any reason to make it up. And more importantly, this was considered, and I think Richard Dolan even cites it as one of his favorites. It was one of the most well documented military incidents in the history of this whole thing, because they there was a long investigation and the U.S. military got involved and et cetera. So something happened. Something certainly happened, and it wasn't
Right.
anything. Wasn't any adversarial technology like the Tic Tac gets debated about today. There was no way there was adversarial technology that could do what this did in 1976.
Right, and the fact that we actually engaged the ET at that time, so this is 50, almost 50 years ago,
Hmm.
that we had a situation where humanity engaged the extraterrestrials. However, the story gets buried, and it's something that they don't want to talk about. And it just, when you start putting the picture together, and that's why when a lot of people talk about the ETs that have come here that are benevolent, and I point out that, yeah, okay, so just say that they all are benevolent. They come here. If you have been dealing with humanity for such an extended period of time, and we keep doing just silly, dumb things, right? Like engaging the ETs or playing with these nuclear weapons, does there come a point to where they change the way that they feel about humanity or the way that they're approaching humanity? And then at the same time, if there is any sort of like there was rumored to be contact when you go back to, like, what was it, Jimmy Carter days, when you go back to then, if there was any sort of actual deal or discussions between humans and extraterrestrials, what did they say, or what would they have said in those meetings? Would they have given us an agreement to say, hey, okay, we've been dealing with you guys. You guys have these weapons. Just go ahead, get rid of these things, and humanity will be okay, going forward. Or, but the government makes their own choice to say, well, no, we can't give those up because they have them, and we're not good until they give them up. So, are the deals that they potentially make behind the scenes that could directly affect humanity, but they they keep it all under a lid, and that's kind of the thing that bothers me about it, because it's obvious that they've been interacting with the extraterrestrials for all this time, and it's just like, what would be the detriment to humanity based on some decision that they make on behalf of humanity? You know what I mean?
Hopefully, they make the right decision. But you're right. We're entrusting them to do that, and that's where the concern lies.
And I don't know if we're even entrusting them. They're actually taking it upon themselves to go ahead and feel like they are the ones who can disseminate the information if they choose to. Whereas if you had humanity get together and make a decision on behalf of us all, if we all got together, just like we get together to vote, right? We get together to pass certain laws and things like that. So if we had the same information that they have, and we sit down as humanity, would we be able to make it maybe a better decision based off of our future versus our governments that would make their decisions based off of their position in the world, their power? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Deep. It gets deep.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. I mean,
Follow the power, follow the money, right? Sadly.
but that's the thing. And when it comes to the phenomenon, it gets all wrapped up in that. And then it's like, what is the government's real motive? So in the next one, it'll kind of point that out. So we have the next one, which is the Rendlesham Forest incident. This one is pretty well known. If you look on the picture, you can see what the ET craft was depicted to be. So the gentleman went into the forest and saw a craft that looks exactly like this. So in the UK, the RF Bentwaters U.S. Air Force personnel claimed to witness a UFO landing in the Rendlesham Forest. The incident remains significant in Britain's UFO history. The Rendlesham Forest incident, also known as Britain's Roswell, occurred in December 1980 at RF Bentwaters in UK. United States Air Force personnel stationed at the base claimed to have witnessed a UFO landing in the forest. The incident remains one of the most significant UFO events in Britain's history, and rumors persist about the U.S. government's potential involvement in covering up that event. Witness testimonies of government documents have field theories about the extraterrestrial encounters, and even more importantly, we had. Can you remember the name of the gentleman?
The commander,
The commander. Yeah, it was
Charles
two.
Halt.
It was
Charles
Holt
Halt.
and the other gentleman who.
The two guys who witnessed it the first night was James Pedeston and
Yes,
John Burroughs. John Burroughs was the guy who got sick recently, and
the VA
Gary
did
Nolan,
not.
Dr. Gary Nolan, had to intervene a little bit to help him out getting his VA benefits, I guess, last year.
Right.
Just some
Because the government
ridiculousness.
would not admit that the incident even happened, and they wouldn't. They even
Right.
for a period of time um, said that they weren't even part of the military at the time. They had denied that they were even in service at the time.
Where do they get that crap from? Yeah, it's almost as bad as like, I mean, not to say that this was true or false, but they're like abolishing their record like they did Bob Lazar or something, right? Like they didn't exist. Yeah, no, Jim Peniston and John Burroughs were the first two guys to come on the thing, and then the second night was when Charles Halt went out there and did his famous tape recording
Recording, yeah.
and saw the light and all that stuff. And come on, this is known very well. And yeah, this one's tough to deny. I mean, there's too many people involved, and it's just bizarre is that they would even go to try and discredit people at this point. I mean, at the
Well,
least, you say, okay, we don't have any proof it happened, leave it alone. But don't go and discredit people and tell them that they weren't part of the military. That's baloney.
well, not only that, but you let the guides. The gentleman was at risk medically for many years and had to deal with all sorts of effects of this encounter, and they
Yes.
wouldn't do anything about it. And so that kind of goes back to like when David Grush says he knows of incidents where people may have been killed, which is directly or indirectly in relation to these ETs. So you have to think with this being the case and them denying medical attention or VA benefits, how many other military personnel have they actually done that to?
Exactly. Oh no, this is just a
Uh,
historical example of what's been going on for a very long time. I mean, look at poor Kevin Day from the Nimitz incident. The guy was so ridiculed and so is suffering so greatly that it's totally unfair to him that he witnessed what he witnessed, spoke about what he saw, and they treat him like he's, you know, he's dishonorable, and it's not. That's terrible. So yeah, I can imagine what John Burroughs has gone through, and the other guys, almost told their story and then probably regretted it. But
well, and it took because at the time of the disclosure, the uh, the hearing in 2013 with Stephen Bassett. At that hearing, they hadn't even figured out the medical information yet or getting the VA benefits. So if you look at that from when the incident happened in the 80s all the way up till at least, I don't know, what year did he, do you know what year he got his benefits? It was
it was
after
like last
2013.
year. I mean, he
Okay.
was struggling. He had issues, I think, all through the 20 teens, and then I think finally, after some fights, Gary Nolan may have intervened and helped them a little bit last year, because he got brought up in and around the time Gary Nolan was on the Tucker Carlson show last year, and I think that topic was revisited then because
So
John
you're
Burroughs
talking
was
about
back then.
35
Yeah,
years roughly of having to deal with these symptoms caused by interacting with this ET craft. And the government just said, "Hey, oh well, we don't care because we're the reason why we're not going to get you the help is because we don't want to tell people that this actually happened. We don't
right,
want to admit that we had anything to do with this
right.
craft." Funny. So, but let me stop for a second because Bryson Foley states News Nation reported at 8:05 p.m. Eastern Time on Cuomo's show that there will be a surprise witness at the hearings. Identities needed to be kept secret for
Good.
protection, and it was kept quiet due to threats.
I was
So,
hoping for this. Maybe you heard me earlier in the show. Maybe it's the Lockheed Martin employee that we're all hoping for, right? I want the military industrial complex whistleblower. I love our military guys, love them, but we've already heard their stories. We need the
and
guy or the woman who's in the military industrial complex. Lockheed is our favorite one to pick on. It could be McDonnell Douglas, or not McDonnell. It could be um, whatever, any of the, pick a name. I want them to come forward and say, all right, we handled the parts, we saw the craft, etc. And that's who we need to talk to. We need the first-hand witness who finally comes out. Of course, they're going to really jeopardize their life. Will never be the same. But I have a feeling there are people out there who are willing to do that. So let's hope that that happens tomorrow, because that would be huge. Then tomorrow would be, you know, amazingly huge, right? It's going to be earth shattering.
yeah, I would love to know. Hopefully, that surprise witness is someone from one of these contractors, one of those people who had hands on.
Yeah,
That would
thanks,
just blow
Magneticus. I
the
had a
the
brain
lid
fart.
wide open. Now, the No Such Thing podcast, shout out to No Such Thing podcast, stated or asked a question, was that the real Rendlesham UFO or just representation? And yeah, it's a representation. So apparently this is what's on the spot at this point. And it's like I'm assuming like a tourist attraction sort of thing, but it's definitely a recreation. Um, Yeah, so let me see. So yeah, and shout out to Stacy, 1111RH222. Now I think I met you over at David Divine broadcast channel. So glad to see you here. And let me see here. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. which we have. This was Belgian wave, and then once again, just to kind of go back, obviously the Rendlesham Forest was, you know, on UK ground, so technically not in the United States, even though it was in relation to where we were stationed at the time. But it's just another case of the government, the U.S. government, taking over the situation and bringing the craft back to, or covering the information. I don't know if they recovered craft there, but they covered the information up and told them that they couldn't say anything about it as well. So the Belgian UFO wave, which was Belgium experienced a wave of UFO sightings over several months. The Belgian Air Force scrambled jets to intercept unidentified objects on radar. Between November 1989 and April 1990, Belgium experienced a wave of UFO sightings garnering international attention. Witnesses reported seeing large triangular shaped objects with bright lights, often maneuvering at high speeds and displaying remarkable flight capabilities. The Belgian Air Force conducted investigations, and while they released some official reports, speculation arose about the involvement of the U.S. government in investigating the sites. Allegations of a government cover up have been fueled by the limited disclosure of classified documents and an official reluctance to address the sightings conclusively. Now, had you were you aware of the Belgian UFO wave? I know it's more of an obscure one.
No, yeah, definitely. This is another classic historical case, Robin. Your list is very comprehensive. No, this was a huge one because this is where, the famed TR3B may have revealed itself for the first time. We don't know, right? We still don't know. It's just 1989 and it sure looks like a TR3B. And
Yeah.
they scrambled jets. I think they were flying F-16s at that time that they bought from us. And I've seen more than one documentary where the main, the leading general of their air force or whatever you call him was talking about this, and Belgium was more open and forthright than the United States was at that time, and the government admitted that there's something happened and they didn't know what was going on, and it went on for what, about 5 months, and then suddenly stopped. So no, this was a big deal, and it'll go down in history as one of the major waves and flaps that still to this day has no explanation.
Yeah, yeah. And looking at the next one here, we'll jump into Virginia, Brazil. Obviously, one of the more recently famous sightings here. So, Brazil, the rumors suggested the U.S. government's involvement in recovering a crashed UFO and capturing extraterrestrial beings in Virginia. Officially confirmed, confirmation remains lacking. The Virginia incident, which occurred in Virginia, Brazil in January 1996, involved alleged sighting of a crashed UFO and the capture of extraterrestrial beings by Brazilian authorities. The rumors suggested that the U.S. government played a role in recovering the crashed UFO and capturing the beings. However, the official confirmation remains lacking and the incident remained highly controversial. So we all obviously know this sighting from James Fox's Moment of Contact, was it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Where the
last fall.
Brazilian authorities had actually supposedly captured one of these beings, physically touching the being, and the being ended up inadvertently killing the person that captured it. They had the three young ladies who actually reported seeing this being crouched by the wall when they were walking through the area, which shows that the beings actually have been on our grounds and have walked around. But it just shows at the end of the day, the Brazilian government obviously handled it, but then the U.S. government came in to take it over and take control of the situation. So once again, we showed up somewhere where we weren't supposed to be. And it's funny how we're usually Johnny on the spot with that stuff. Like we're always right there. As soon as it happens, we're there. And that just is weird to me. But what do you think about that?
Totally. What was that one in Mexico that was a similar situation? Socorro or something like not Socorro. That was the one with Arizona. There was another incident in Arizona similar where we were Johnny on the spot and we cleaned everything up. But no, this particular case, and shout out to James Fox and Moment of Contact, which I actually watched in its entirety maybe a month ago. I think it's on Tubi for free now. Awesome, awesome, awesome coverage. And all the way back to where the craft originally crashed. And then, of course, the chase around town of the beings. There was the one that the girl saw, which your image depicts here. And then there was the one running in the streets that the police captured. And the one policeman who manhandled the alien ended up dying in 2 weeks from his exposure. So yeah, no, this is one of those cases that's just unbelievable. I
I
mean,
guess
hard to argue with. And then yeah, the U.S. comes in with their helicopters and whisks away all the evidence, and then decades go by and nobody knows, right?
so. Bryson's Folly asked, "Do the beings excrete waste through their skin, which is why there was a strong smell of ammonia
Ammonia.
reported by witnesses in the Virginia case?" And it
I
could
think
be
so.
that,
I
or
mean,
it
they're a
could be.
different biology than us, right? Who knows what
But
their
then,
biology is?
but also, they have, for instance, like those frogs that excrete poison through their glands,
Sure,
as just as a defense mechanism.
sure,
So it could be even something along those lines.
absolutely.
But the thing that you points out is that pretty much in a lot of the different cases, you have reports of them having this smell. So this usually
Yeah.
sulfur type of smell.
They
So
talk about that a lot in the James Fox's documentary because a lot of the hospital workers got interviewed because there was all kinds of action going on at the hospital, both with the policeman who ended up dying, and I believe the aliens got dragged in there before they got hauled away. And yeah, the people who were in the hospital were interviewed and talked of the unbearable stench that was there. And yeah, ammonia is one of those things that we humans are sensitive to, and it just burns our nose. And that's what was going on here. So sure,
that's just pretty crazy.
they're a different biology. Who knows what their base is, and we'll never know until the truth comes out. But that doesn't surprise me.
We're gonna give a shout out to Crazy Irish. Thanks for coming through. Thanks for subbing as well. We have, let's see. I know I shouted out Cashew, but I'm shouting out Cashew again because Cashew is the
Oh,
bomb.
we have a whole bunch of
Appreciate
new
you,
people
Cashew.
tonight. We have
Maggie and
Stacy.
10.
We have Red Creek Mafia. We have Still
Oh,
True
Red Creek
69.
Mafia. I
Mm-hmm.
missed Red Creek Mafia. So Red Creek Mafia,
Welcome
thanks for coming
everybody.
through. Thanks for subbing. We go ahead and go back a little bit here. I just want to make sure I acknowledge everyone
Paradox
who came
Fossils was
through.
in there.
I didn't know such thing podcast, but let me do them again. Let's see.
Welcome
Paradox
everybody.
Fossils. And let's see. Okay. All right. We're looking good. So appreciate you guys coming through. And let's see. So the next one that we have on the list here is the Phoenix Lights. So, we have a good friend who actually filmed the Phoenix Lights, who was in the chat earlier. He might still be in here, Mr. Tom King.
He
So if you see
is.
Tom King in the
He is
chat,
in the
make sure
chat.
you say hello to that guy because he's the one who, one of the ones that filmed this incident.
First-hand witness.
And we're going to talk about it here. So in 1997, thousands reported seeing a massive V-shaped object with lights over Phoenix, Arizona. The U.S. government attributed the event to military flares and conventional craft. The Phoenix Lights incident took place in March of 1997 when thousands of witnesses, including Tom King, reported seeing a massive V-shaped object with lights flying over Phoenix, Arizona. The event garnered widespread media coverage and sparked public interest. The U.S. government attributed the event to military flares and conventional craft. Critics argue that the explanation does not account for all the witness testimonies. The limited transparency and contradictory statements from authorities have fueled suspicions of a government cover up regarding the true nature of the Phoenix Lights. And we know Mr. Tom King was there, and we know he says that this was the real thing. So, another situation where the government covered up something as blatant as a craft flying overhead of thousands of people. So if they would do that, if they would do a blatant sighting like that, if they would try to just say no, it didn't happen, it was something else. Like, what is the reason behind that? Is there a real reason? Are they really protecting us from something? I don't know. What do you think, Mattel?
You heard my theory on this before, and I'm going to see, if Mr. Tom King concurs with it. I think he and I spoke about this at one point. On the Phoenix Lights, there are two events, the second of which was the cover-up, and the second of which were the lights that got most widely photographed. Sometime around 8 to 8:30 p.m. was when, maybe it was 7:30 to 8:30 p.m., was when the big old black triangle made its pass by. That was the real deal. And it came through, and even Governor Fife Symington, who ridiculed it at the time, admits to having seen that. And most of the documentaries you see on the Phoenix Lights, where the people talk about the football field-sized craft that blocked out the stars, that was early. So then madness ensued. And then at 10 o'clock, this is my feeling, and Tom can back me up or tell me I'm wrong, the National Guard or whomever dropped the flares. And the flares are what were more widely photographed, as shown in your photo here, over the middle of the city. Right. And those were then used as the scapegoat or the excuse as to what happened, but the main event had already taken place. And so they used that to say, oh, what you saw at 8:30 was just some flares that we're doing here. I honestly and truly believe this was the case, and the government, the military stepped in to basically create a ploy in order to blame it on it at 10:30, whereas the real deal happened 2 hours prior. And I don't know, it's not really covered well, in my personal opinion. This point isn't covered well in a lot of the discussions that go on about the Phoenix Lights, because I think that point gets missed. But this is my belief, and based on what I've read and heard and seen, that's what went down. And to this day, a big craft went over Phoenix, and they obfuscated it by dropping flares and saying, yeah, there were flares. Of course, after that happened, they were like, oh, no, we didn't drop
the misdirection.
But then later on, they said, oh, yeah, we were in the middle of an exercise. Please,
which could be
how stupid
similar to, like we talked about the 29 Palms, the image and video that Corbell released, and how they actually found the original video pretty much instantly, and that it had been online the whole time apparently, but that could have been the exact same thing, where they went out and released flares after the fact, because these military personnel stated that they saw a craft, just like with the Phoenix Lights. These people say they saw a craft, but then they dropped flares to say no, they were flares. So
exactly.
It gets deep. It gets deep. So looking at this here, we have also the Nimitz Tic Tac. So we're getting into current times where, these are the things that are currently being displayed on the news. And obviously David Fravor, David Fravor, who was part of this, will be testifying tomorrow at the hearing. So he'll be telling this story here. But just obviously we know that this was an incident from 2004, November, off the coast of California, near the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier. Pilots and radar operator reported encounters, which was Kevin Day, reported encounters with unidentified flying objects exhibiting extraordinary maneuvers and speeds. And declassified videos of the incident were released in 2017, reigniting discussions about government knowledge and the potential UFO cover-ups. So that also that release of information also included the Navy video, the gimbal video, which I believe 99.9% were the images, the objects I filmed. And you can see back on the episode 30 that we just did, titled White Spheres in the Sky, where we kind of go over extensively what those things are. These things you're seeing here, what the gimbal probably was, and the fact that they're definitely still in our skies. So make sure you guys go back and watch that. And also, want to give a shout out to Tom King. We did some work with Tom King, a couple episodes on sky watching. So if you go under the channel here and you go to the playlist, you're going to see a sky watching playlist, which is part one and part two. Part one features Tim Senor and Tom King. Then part two is Tom King talking about the Cosmic Watch. So make sure you definitely put that in your playlist. And the next one we have up here is the article that came out in 2017, right? So Helene Cooper, Ralph Blumenthal, and Leslie Kane. And basically in 2017, December, New York Times published an article written by Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal revealing the existence of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP. The article exposed the government's involvement in investigating UFO sightings, fueling speculations of a hidden agenda and UFO cover-up. The revelation sparked intense public interest and demands for more transparency from the government about their knowledge of unidentified aerial phenomenon. And, this is basically where a lot of the newer people came in, including myself, because at this point, I found out that these things were actually real. Like, they're here. They're currently here right now. And that was what kind of drew me in. I couldn't get enough. And I think there was an article prior to this where someone mentioned the recovery of off-world vehicles. Do you recall that article? Was that before this one or after? I think it was
I don't
Christopher
recall that.
Mellon might have done that article.
Maybe he did that after, because the TTSA and everything was born after this. Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and the TTSA came after that, and maybe there was discussions in that after the 2017 article, I think may have happened. No, this was the beginning of, I'll call it, the current UFO era. And just one comment on the 2004 Nimitz incident and David Fravor, which was covered in this article from 2017. And kudos to Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal for all that they've done for the community and the movement. Out of all of the cases, and we've gone back to the beginning here, and we're now getting close to the current day, that Nimitz incident and David Fravor, whom I've heard talked about today, even in some News Nation clips with people about him and his credibility. And I was watching Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp on Weaponized from the show last night, where they were interviewing the guy who actually went out and filmed the Tic Tac video. I want to say Callahan, but it's not right. That's not his name.
It was Underwood. Was it the guy?
Underwood, yes.
Yeah, okay.
He was the guy who actually went out after Fravor got back and Dietrich got back and landed on the carrier. He went out and filmed him. He talked so highly of Fravor. And even before hearing that today, I thought to myself, if there's anybody in the world you're going to believe, it's David Fravor. Why would he make it up? And his description and his demeanor about the whole thing, because you can just tell his personality. He wasn't freaking out by it. He wasn't like denying it. He just told it like it was. And yeah, the Tic Tac did some amazing things that nothing can do. That incident, in my mind, is huge and will remain huge forever because of him and his credibility. And I value that. And this 2017 article was really what brought it to light, because prior to this, we had no idea it had happened, right?
Yep.
Nobody knew. So great stuff. And he'll tell it again tomorrow. We already gone through this, but I never get tired of it. I really don't. I love listening to him, like the 60 Minutes thing he did a year ago, whenever it was. I'll never get tired of him telling that story, because it is just, I don't know how anyone can.
Yeah, because it was actually, it wasn't just a UFO sighting, it was a UFO encounter
Yeah.
where he actually interacted with this
Yes.
intelligent
Amazing.
thing. So that will go down in history as probably one of the most intriguing cases that we have here. Just the fact that he interacted, so whoever was on that other end connected with him on when they did that little dogfight sequence. So that will always be amazing. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we got to give props to Leslie Kane, Ralph Blumenthal for having the gall to be able to go ahead and get this published in one of the biggest publications in the United States and probably the world, New York Times. And obviously, when this happened, we ended up getting who we'll get to next, which is our guy, Lou Elizondo. The original whistleblower, can we call him that? I don't know. I mean, he's definitely a whistleblower. I don't know if he's the original one, but he played just as big a part in getting that story out or making that story credible because he was able to come out and immediately say, yes, we had these programs going on. I was involved with this, and this is what we have on Lou Elizondo. So, Lou Elizondo, a former Pentagon official, publicly revealed his involvement as the head of the secret government program to study UFOs, ATIP. His statement added credibility to the ATIP disclosure and brought more attention to the government's role in UFO investigations. The Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, was a secretive research initiative funded by the Pentagon to investigate UFO sightings and encounters. The program operated from 2007 through 2012. The revelation of ATIP's existence in 2017 further fueled the discussions. And we know on the books, supposedly it was supposed to end in 2012, but then that's where it picked up. Was it OSAP, right? Or
OSAP had ended, right? Because OSAP
first.
was first, and then ATIP emerged from that, and there is
And was still
controversy.
continued through the day that he actually left the Pentagon. Yeah, so really through 2017.
Early. He left in 2017, I want to say September, October, almost the same amount of time prior to the December news release by the New York Times piece by Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal, almost about the same time as David Grush left his role in April of this year, prior to what he did in May and June. So it's almost a similar timeline.
There's a lot of things you could say about Mr. Elizondo here, but he was just as important to that initial or giving that article credibility. Because truthfully, if you have no Lou Elizondo, that same article, the impact isn't the same.
No.
So having him come out to validate what was being said in the media and being able to put himself on the line in order to get the discussion going, that's what I applaud him for, and I'm glad that he did it. I really don't care what he did after that. A lot of people want to put some spin on some of the things he was involved in. I'm not going to really worry about that.
No.
He played his part in getting this thing moving. The momentum and everything we're experiencing today actually started from this point, because even though we had this history that we gone over here of interactions and encounters with UFOs, the government had done so much to squash it that none of that ever gained traction. Even though we had some cases as big as the Malmstrom and Rendlesham things that really you would think would be things that would break the thing open. The government stepped in each time and put the kibosh on it. But
Hmm.
this one they couldn't. They tried because we remember when Lou Elizondo came out, they did try to discredit him and said,
Oh
"Oh, he
yeah.
wasn't the head of ATIP. ATIP wasn't an actual program." So they tried to do, but the momentum had already started going, and it was really hard to stop it. And as you see today, since then we were able to get the UAP reports. We were able to get things put into law in the NDAA. We've had a couple hearings already in front of Congress regarding UFOs,
Hmm.
leading up to we had NASA on record participating in the hearing, even though they didn't give us anything.
UAP task force came out after
The UAP
Elizondo in
task force
2020 timeframe, 2019, 2020. That wouldn't have happened if it weren't for him,
in a
right or
short
wrong,
period of time. That's
legit
what
or illegit. It was, yeah, it all came
6 years
together.
ago, maybe.
Yep,
We're going on six
yep.
years at this point. We had a lot of movement and momentum in that time, and this year, 2023, it is actually seeming like it's going to boil over at this point. So that kind of takes us into our Ask the Chat,
Ask the chat.
which is going to be, why do you feel the government insists on covering up UFOs? Mateo, what would be your answer to that?
Oh, I got an answer to that. I've kind of gone around and around on this since the some talk about maybe 2 3 weeks ago about where we're heading with these hearings and what the hearings could reveal and what Senator Marco Rubio knows. What does Tim Burchett know? What did Rubio see in the closed hearings? Can Rubio tell us about what went on in the closed hearings? What about the closed hearing that's going to happen tomorrow? What can they tell us? Can they tell us? Can they give us confirmation without disclosure? And then you heard me talk about George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell's debate that they did maybe 2 weeks ago, where George Knapp said, "Geez, I don't know if I knew if I could tell everybody the truth, because can I do that?" The government, this is my opinion, the government does not want to disclose and wants to keep covering up, because even if they tell us, eh, give us the confirmation that NHI exists and they have crash retrievals, that they're reverse engineering, even if they tell us that and say we don't know anything more, that just opens a huge can of worms, right? Because then 1,001 questions ensue. And they don't want to have to deal with that, because if we're going to ask all about, well, what happened 75 years ago at Roswell, and every question we've had since then will come up. Did you kill people to keep it silent, etc., etc.? There's 1,001 questions that will come
Yeah.
just from mere confirmation. That's the first issue. The second issue, and this is where I've gone back and forth a little bit, would confirmation start, where we're reverse engineering some alien tech, would confirmation start a new arms race? Or, and this is where I kind of moved myself to a week or so later, is that arms race already taking place, and has it already been taking place? So the government is in a really, really bad spot here. They're in a bad spot. And the best thing that they can do is say nothing and keep it concealed, because anything, any confirmation at all, it's like what George Knapp says. It's like partial confirmation or partial disclosure is like being partially pregnant. Sorry, I don't want to offend anybody with that, but it was hysterical when he said it because it was too true, right? you can't go halfway here. The moment the government reveals, or the moment the government confirms anything, the house of cards is going to come down. And
Hmm.
whether they like it or not, which they don't like, they're going to be in a spot. Our adversaries, who may already know the same stuff and may already be engaged in this new arms race,
Yeah,
there,
sure they do.
there's bringing it to the public attention. It's messy. It's very messy. So this is the answer to your question. Is that is the answer to your question. The government. It behooves the government to keep this under wraps, because otherwise they are going to be in some deep doo doo. Let's see what the chat has to say.
Ask the chat.
So, looking at the chat, so Maggie and Ted, to protect a bigger investment, war initiatives, or ultimate power, money, and control issues. Definitely. With the
Agreed.
question being, why do you feel the government insists on covering up UFOs? That is a perfect answer. Cashew says, people get ready. This Curtis Mayfield, 1965. Hey. And
Good job.
Magneticus says, the government has the people right where they want them. Oh, that is no more truer than good.
Mm.
That's exactly where we're at, Magneticus, straight up. And Tom King says that's why they always say we need new data, because they know in the past it's a shit show of government corruption that is worse. And I agree
Boy, do
with
I
you.
hate that
And
when
I
they do
think
that.
that's why they keep pointing out the fact that we don't want to go prior to 2004, because they don't want to tie themselves up in all that misinformation and all the things that they did prior to that.
All the history
Maggie,
you covered tonight, they don't want to
it,
talk about it. They don't
Maggie
even
and
know
Ted
it.
says yes, opening a huge can of worms, which it would be, and oh no, a can of anacondas. Okay, no, that's about
Truth.
more accurate. So,
Truth
yeah, I
there.
mean that's what it's all about. Magneticus says just pull the debt note. Who owes who?
Oh, it's
There you go. So with that being said, I mean, just like you said, Patel, this thing is going on in every country. You know, it isn't, and that's why it's so funny when they sit up and talk about government adversarial tech. Like, they have recovered the same type of crashes that you've recovered. So, they potentially are working on the same type of reverse engineering that you're
sure.
working on. So, it's no secret. You guys, truthfully, there's no secret, especially with the, in the spy world, they have agents from each country and they know everyone's business at this point. So, what is it really? What is the real reason that we should know this? Why is it that somber always comes up in the conversation? Like, if you know the answer to that and you still will stand on your line and not give us the information, that means you don't really care about the people, and you don't care that we're put at risk. It's just like I showed with my sighting. I had 47 of these objects that flew overhead. I believe the government knows what those are, or they've seen them before, and they can give me more information on those. However, they let a citizen like myself and whoever else may have been subjected to it to just be subjected to it. And I guess we'll just see what happens. If you can do your military the way that you did with the Rendlesham Forest, if you can treat them that way, the average citizen doesn't stand a chance. And yeah, I mean, that's what we're talking about, Tom King. We the people, straight up. And yeah, so I'll do that, Cashew. And let me see here. With that being said, I do have this, which I hope is some inspiration to where we can go with this. Tomorrow could be, and it kind of took a hit because obviously we had no clue that Tim Burchett was going to get bumped out of this that way.
Mm.
But we still hope that this hearing tomorrow is the fight to end the cover up. So the fight to end the cover up, which means that from here going forward, just releasing it. This is the chance that the government has to come forward, be truthful, Tell us they made a mistake. We'll never lie again, and maybe we can build trust back there. But at the very least, this just needs to be the moment that humanity uh, gets to get on the path of figuring out where we're gonna go with this. I mean, because it's just sad to have a group of people in power that feel like they can stand between us and our destiny, and it's just the reason why we do this show. And it kind of bugs me, man. What do you think about that, Mattel?
Couldn't agree with you more. And as you were speaking there, I was just thinking to myself about after tomorrow's hearing, if it's covered on mainstream media, which it better be. I'm thinking about, man, maybe what if mainstream media goes out and like interviews people on the street? What I'm hoping to hear people on the street say is resound that one human family, we're all one. This is from our standpoint. What are you hiding from us? We can handle the truth. Why are you holding this back? And
Right.
I'm hoping if that happens, we hear that message from anybody, because that will resonate. I mean, it resonates with everybody here, and we love our audience, and we're all like-minded. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here all together right now. But I think we're not alone, and those who may not be in the know or nearly as well versed in the history that you so well covered tonight, Rob, we're all, everybody shares the same feeling. It's like, well, we're grown up now. We can handle the truth. We don't think it's impossible for non-human intelligence. Why the big secret? What's going on here? So we'll see
Yeah.
where it
Why
leads.
the big cover up?
Why the
Exactly.
big cover up? So we'll see. So
So
anyhow, we'll we're gonna get there, and we'll see how tomorrow will, after tomorrow morning, I think Thursday, and tomorrow afternoon and Thursday will be a new day. It'll be interesting to see where it takes us.
yeah, yeah, no problem at all, Maggie M10. That's what we do this here for. If you go on our catalog, you're gonna find we do have
Thank
a
you very
lot
much.
of informational content here. And just like last show, we covered UFOs and consciousness. We went kind of deep there. So if you want to work your brain, I definitely recommend that one. If you want to see UFO, a real UFO for sure, go on and check the white spheres video we just did the other day, where we connect the dots on some of these objects that are in our skies and are definitely not of this world. So yeah, we definitely cover a lot of that. Sophia says, yes, we need the truth, and I agree with you. I'm totally with you. Tom King, it's not that we the people are weird randos online or from the street. These are pilots. Our Congress people are talking about NHI. Yeah. And
Yeah,
Magneticus says, been working with non-human intelligence for almost 20 years now. So if the
magnetic.
people
Got some
know, if
interesting
the
stuff
and
going
it
on.
that means the people know. That means we are aware, and it's just making the rest of humanity aware. Because, like Bryce Abel said, once you get enough people to know that this is going on, you're gonna have those new people asking those questions, the same ones you just stated, Mattel. Like, what is going on? We want some answers, and it's gonna. But the problem that we're gonna run into is that those people in power don't want to give up power. They don't want to give up their positions. They don't want things to change in that way, in the way that's beneficial for humanity, because if it's beneficial for humanity, it's not beneficial for them. And that's kind of where we'll go ahead and end that. So we're going to end up, when you hear this music, that means we're going to jump into our next segment, which is Once Upon a Time in Ufology. And we're going to cover today Kenneth Arnold, because this is where it all started, right? This is where the common term of flying saucer, this is where uh,
The
this
history
this
begins.
this is where it was coined. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into Kenneth Arnold. And the story goes, on June 24th, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, an experienced pilot, was flying his private plane near Mount Rainier in Washington state When he encountered a formation of unidentified flying objects, he described them as 9 peculiar crescent-shaped objects which he compared to a saucer skipping over water. Notably, Arnold never used the term flying saucer to describe what he saw. However, when Arnold shared his account with the press after the sighting, the phrase flying saucer appeared in the headlines, attributing the term to him. The media's sensationalized interpretation of his description fueled public fascination and created an enduring association between UFOs and saucer-like shapes. This inadvertent misinterpretation sparked a wave of UFO sightings across the country, further perpetuating the flying saucer myth. The discrepancy between Arnold's actual description and the media's portrayal highlights the complexities of reporting and interpreting UFO sightings. Now, witness testimonies, especially those involving extraordinary events like UFO encounters, can be subject to misinterpretation, sensationalism, and the influence of cultural expectations. Arnold's crescent-shaped objects were likely more accurately described as boomerangs or delta-shaped objects. However, the flying saucer label became so deeply ingrained in popular culture that it overshadowed the true nature of what Arnold saw. The shape and characteristics of UFOs reported in later sightings often echoed the flying saucer archetype, reflecting the impact of media influence in shaping people's perception. So, Mateo, with the Kenneth Arnold sighting, what do you feel about it?
Well, it started it all. He had his sighting and he described what he saw, and this was what, 3 weeks before Roswell?
Mm-hmm.
He had really no preconceived notion, right? And he had no reason to conjure up this story. He's a pilot, right? And he wasn't like UFOs were being sensationalized prior to this. There was talk, but not really nearly as much as one would think. And as a pilot, you kind of risk yourself a little bit when you reveal this. So he didn't have a whole lot of motivation other than to tell the truth. And he did. And look what happened. And the press, of course, latched onto it. And then in the aftermath, there were just like tons of sightings, scads and scads of reports that led up to Roswell, of course, in July. And he really brought in the modern UFO era with what he did and what he reported. And I don't know. I think he's very credible. And apparently he was, if you read about some of his history, he was quite the respected guy. Pilot. He was looking for a downed military aircraft when he had his sighting, I guess, flying around Mount Rainier. And why would a guy like him make that up? I don't understand it. So he saw
Also,
something.
though, when you look at it, I have to wonder because just like we were reading here, so it showed that it could have been described as a flying crescent or a flying boomerang, right?
Yep.
So the fact that it was coined flying saucer and then that's what we use. So do you?
Yeah,
you
I know
think,
the reason for that.
but
The
maybe
reason was because he said that the
they
way
were
that the
skipping.
flying, it looked like a saucer skipping off water.
Yeah, but what I want to say about that is that I wonder. It makes me wonder how had it been reported as a flying boomerang or a flying crescent,
Hmm.
would the stigma be so thick as it is, and would pop culture have played so big of an impact in making it this thing that because flying saucer, when you hear that term, there's stigma attached to it. So would the stigma still have been there as in and connected as deeply if it was reported as what it was, which was like a flying crescent or flying boomerang? So could that one little thing, had that one little thing been tweaked, how would things be today as far as that stigma goes? That's kind of what I think about when I think about this sighting.
I'll tell you this, every comic book that came after that would have had to change. Flying saucer was so overused as a term in every comic book, every movie, every book. I mean, the first UFO book I read was on the shelf in my old place because my older brother had it. Was Flying Saucer Serious Business, which was a classic book from the 60s. It that would have never happened, and whatever the term was that got coined by the press on that day would have stuck, be it flying boomerang, and that would have carried the same stigma. Saucer, of course, was more, I guess, memorable at the time, and because Kenneth Arnold used it, it ended up it stuck. So to answer your question, I don't think he could have called it, purple people eaters, and that still would have been carried the same stigma, right? So it doesn't matter. It UFOs, which came later, carry a stigma. Flying saucers carry a stigma. UAP is the current term, and it doesn't even matter what you call it. It's all the same thing. It wouldn't have mattered what you called it then. That's my take.
Yeah, I feel the way I feel about it is, I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of craft that when you look at science fiction, the craft that they created off of this sighting were all with the idea of these things being saucers. So the whole pop culture aspect of it and what we grew to understand were flying were these spaceships. We all depicted them in saucer shapes. So had they been depicted as other shapes and never depicted as saucers, would that it would just it's almost like when you think about the Mandela effect, how that timeline changes, and it's just like, would something like that have happened here if the popular depiction wasn't the classic saucer shape? When you think about it, there is no classic saucer shape if this was misreported. So it's like,
Even in this case,
right. So it's like,
rest,
where would we be? It's just, I mean, it's obviously nothing we can figure out, but it just is something to ponder, because if you look at the shape right there, if those were what we determined to be, then we would know those weren't from. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Regardless of the
I could
term,
go
Rob,
deep
I
on
think
that.
it would have been the same. I think the stigma would have stayed stuck, and it just happened to be that saucers was a convenient term of the day, and that stuck, and the rest is history.
Yeah. So let me see here. Paint a B2 in silver paint, and what will you see?
He's basically suggesting that a B-2 bomber painted silver would look
Would
like
be this
Kenneth
here,
Arnold's
huh?
crescent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
very close. No,
Weather
you're right.
balloons look like saucers. Coins look like flying saucers. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, had they been this shape that stood out like this, I think things could have been a little bit different. As far as, I think there would be no mistaken. And I think, just like, for instance, right? So you get down to like my sighting, which isn't a classic saucer. It's a totally different shape. And then you get these triangles and things like that. But
Cigars and what
you
have you.
don't in cigars, right? So you don't see the classic uh, classic saucer shape, because potentially maybe classic saucer shapes were never a thing. So it's
We don't
crazy,
know.
right?
There's all
So
kinds of
Magneticus
stuff.
says, granted, when I call a Minuteman Silo, oh, okay. In a regular, we was talking about. Okay, I put that up, Magneticus. You got me. Maggie M10, LOL. I know, huh? LOL.
It's all right.
Now, with that being said,
Can't
we
take
have, yeah, it's
Magneticus
okay.
anywhere.
We get down on this channel a lot sometimes, so we're good to go. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our science fiction to science fact, and what we're gonna do for that. It's always a good movie. This time is going to be the X-Files, right? Fight the
There
future,
you go.
because Agent Scully and Mulder, they were always fighting against the government cover-up. It was always about the things that were being covered up, and then the Mulder trying to figure out a way to get Scully to see the light, but it would always happen when she wasn't looking, right?
Hmm.
So let me give you a brief synopsis of this
Great,
real quick before we
great movie,
discuss it here.
great series.
With the X-Files Fight the Future. The X-Files Fight the Future is a 1998 sci-fi thriller based on the popular TV series X-Files. The movie follows FBI agents Fox Mulder and Dana Scully as they investigate a deadly bombing incident. While on the case, they uncover a government conspiracy linked to extraterrestrial life in a potential global catastrophe. As they delve deeper into the mystery, Mulder and Scully find themselves in a dangerous race against time to prevent the government's hidden agenda from unleashing an otherworldly threat on humanity. The film combines intense action, suspense, and the signature intrigue of the TV series, offering a thrilling cinematic experience for both fans and newcomers to the X-Files universe. So, just like we were talking about, what do you think about the X-Files Fight the Future?
I actually did see that movie back when it first came out in the late 90s. And yeah, as you always do, Rob, you pick good ones. A movie that then, what it meant then, rewatching it now, what it means now, it ties right into what we were just talking about. Is there an arms race going on between us and all of our adversaries using alien tech? That's what this talk on the movie was. Is that the reason why the government doesn't want to disclose the truth? Very well, very well could be. Now, I don't think we're on the precipice of what was going on in that movie yet, but we could very well be soon if what we suspect is true and there is alien tech that everyone's racing to reverse engineer so they can make a better weapon. It's scary, you know. And that movie, I remember watching that. It was scary, and now it kind of means even more. That's the reason you brought it up.
And that's the thing. I mean, when it comes down to the X Files, they were ahead of their time, and they were on something. I mean, it was definitely looked at as strictly science fiction back then. But yeah, you're right. You look at it through a new lens. Look at it today, understanding what we know about where we're at in this disclosure process, and that these things could be real. And I swear, just like Maggie M10 said, she wants to rewatch the entire X Files series. Watched the pilot again the other day. You would be amazed and shocked at how on point they were with a lot of the stuff that they were saying, and it makes a lot of the things that you saw on that series very, very plausible. And it's kind of, it's kind of freaky when you think about it. But yeah, with that being said, that is science fiction, a science fact. Let me go ahead and get us ready to go. That's that. Yes, yes, yes. So, the government, the history, the secrets, the obfuscation, the misdirection, the cover up, and where are we going from here? Is tomorrow the day that we, turn that corner and start getting on the actual path to figuring out what humanity's capabilities are, possibilities are, where we can go from here? I mean, it's about time. Even if you love your governments, and like I said, we're definitely not anti-government here. Let's get this straight. But at the same time, to have power over the people, you also have to give people the power. And I don't think that's what we're kind of doing here if we're keeping secrets from each other. It should be, if it isn't national security, then we need to know. We need to be plugged into exactly what it is that is going on here. So I don't know. How do you feel about that, Mattel?
I keep hope out all the time, my friend. I know the government is hiding things because of all the reasons we talked about. The arms race, the tech advantage, the war, the military advantage. What Maggie M10 referenced, which was I totally overlooked, which was the money and the power, right? Especially for the military-industrial complex that gets money for all of the work they do on this. Beyond that, as you and I talk about in this podcast every time, and there it is, the greater good of humanity is really what matters in the end. And the revelation, the confirmation, and maybe the disclosure would be huge. The world will never be the same. And if it handled right, it would be an amazingly positive thing. We would all be, we really would be together. We would recognize the fact that we're one human family. If we could just get past our primeval ways when it comes to that. And I remain hopeful. I do. I remain hopeful we can get through that. Now, whether or not that happens tomorrow or not, we can't, we don't know, and it's unlikely. We have to curb our enthusiasm, as we discussed earlier. But it's moving the ball down the field. And tomorrow's going to be a big day. We're going to get a first down tomorrow, no doubt. And whether it's touchdown, we don't know yet, but we will see.
It could be. It potentially could be. Yeah, I mean, and all we need is everybody to do their part. We're doing our part by doing something or having a place for humanity to come together and try to put the game plan together, because like it shows on the screen, we do this for the positive progression of humanity. All the work that we put into putting on shows is directly related to furthering humanity. And if everybody thought that way, and hopefully this spreads, I would rather shows out there copy our format and our ideas, only because we definitely do. We have a real genuine intention on why it is that we do this. So with that being said, I don't know. Let me go ahead and get us up out of here, Mattel. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and say what's up to the chat and thank them for all coming. So
let's go through them.
It's been a pleasure. So Stillpool69, thank you for coming through. And actually, that's a great question. So it might be, but I'm going to set it up so we can air it live here on this channel. So if you're looking for a place to come watch this hearing, definitely stop through. The chat will be open, so you definitely be able to talk to everybody in the chat. I may come in and do some live stuff with it, but for the most part, I definitely want you guys to enjoy and soak in what is going on with this hearing. So yeah, we'll definitely set it up to air here. And let me see. So yeah, thank you for asking that question, Stillpoo69. And thank you for coming too. Maggie M10, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for sharing. Cashew, thank you for sharing, and thank you for being a great person there. Magneticus, you're one of our day ones, man. We all the way from the other show, so we really appreciate you coming through and supporting. Let's go ahead and move through here. I know there's a lot more in here, because I want to thank everyone. Tom King, TFK, Tom King, all day. We love you, man. Thanks for coming through. Sophia, thanks for coming through. And I'm gonna take my time here. Let's see.
Lots of folks.
Dogface, hey, I missed you, man. Thanks for coming through. Thanks. Dogface came through. Okay. Let's see. VA Moon, thanks for coming through. I know David Divine Broadcasted came through, so thank you, David. Bryson's Folly, thank you for coming through. Can't forget Bryson. Let's see.
turning.
Yeah, this thing is loading slow, but I'm gonna take my time with it. Crazy Irish, thank you for coming through. We appreciate you coming through. Let's see. Stacy 1111 RH222, thank you for coming through. The No Such Thing podcast, thank you so much for supporting. Thanks for coming through. Paradox Fossils, thanks for coming through. We appreciate you. We're not gonna miss a one here. JH556, thank you so much for coming through. And Red Creek Mafia, appreciate you. Thanks for coming through. Long Island Bigfoot, definitely gonna check out your channel. I'm subscribed, so I want to thank you so much for coming through as well. We got Freckles S, thank you for coming through. To appreciate all this love. It's a lot of love right here, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it all.
I think you nailed it.
Bryson's Folly. I just want to make sure I said Bryson's Folly. Derek Galloway.
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming
Derek,
through.
Yeah.
Derek
Derek's
is
a repeat offender. He's part of the fam.
Let's see. Yep. I just want to make sure here. It's worth the time.
Mike Jones. We have a gentleman.
Oh, Mike Jones. Mike Jones.
Mike was hiding in the background. Big ups to Mike. Thanks for coming, Mike.
Thank you for coming, Mike Jones. And yeah, I think that's
you got
about it. Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I really appreciate everybody coming through. That's a nice long list of people. Once again, you know, we do this for the positive progression of humanity. Also, let me put this out there as well. We have the viewer call-in message line. We would love to get this going. The phone number is 856-843-3444 or 856-THE-DIG. You can leave a message anytime. It's 24/7. You want to leave, you know, a thought on a topic, a current topic, something you want us to cover, an experience, anything. Just go ahead and you just want to say hi. Just go ahead and leave a message. It's we'll definitely appreciate it. We'll play it on an upcoming episode. Outside of that, though, I had some fun. Mateo, I know you had fun as well. I am your host here, Mr. Rob G. That's Mateo. He is the engineer at the Social Dig. And we just want to thank everybody once again for coming. I can't say it enough. We're going to go ahead and get you guys out of here pretty quick here, though. All right. You guys take care.